The first time I realized something was wrong, it wasn't the silence. It was the way the mailbox at the edge of the road had been turned to face the woods, like it was waiting for someone coming from the wrong direction. I should have taken that as a warning. Instead, I kept driving. I've loved that town for as long as I can remember. A place like that doesn't feel like a location. It feels like a habit, a summer smell, a certain kind of light on the trees. For almost 20 years, I showed up there whenever I could, sometimes for a weekend, sometimes for a whole month. It sat tucked between a stretch of forest, a wide patch of fields, and a slow brown river that curved like it had all the time in the world. It was big enough to have a small store, a few churches, a post office that opened when it felt like it, and a gas pump that always looked like it might collapse. But it was also far enough away that you had to want to get there. You'd leave the highway, Route 77 north of Charlotte, and take an unmarked turn onto a skinny road that didn't look like it led anywhere worth going. Then you'd drive 14 or 15 miles with nothing but trees on both sides, the road narrowing and widening unpredictably, the pavement breaking into long scars. No cell service for parts of it, no streetlights, no real reason for anyone to be on it unless they had a destination. That was the point. My grandmother's house sat at the far end of town, near the river. A small place with a sagging porch and a backyard that always seemed to grow twice as fast as the rest of the world. When I was a kid, she'd call us out there like it was the most natural thing. Come eat, come rest, come help me pick beans, come listen to the rain hit the tin roof. Then my grandfather died. And 2 winters after that, everything changed. In early January, my grandmother started calling my parents more than usual. Not to chat, not to complain about the weather, not to ask about my job. She kept asking my dad the same question. Can you come get me? Not tomorrow, not next week, not when the roads were better, now. My mother told me she sounded off. Not scared in a dramatic way, more like she was trying hard not to sound scared at all, like she was reading from a script and forgetting the lines. They made the decision quickly. My parents had a 3-bedroom place in town. There was room. Grandma wasn't the kind of person who needed babysitting. She was sharp, organized, stubborn. My dad drove out the next day. He came back alone. My grandmother was gone. I won't drag you through the details. It was winter. It was paperwork. It was bad timing and worse roads, and the way grief hits you in pieces instead of all at once. What matters is what it did to my father. He stopped talking about the place entirely. For a man who used to tell stories about that town like it was a second childhood, he turned it into a blank spot. If someone brought it up, he'd get quiet, then change the subject like his mouth physically couldn't form the name of it anymore. By May, I couldn't take it. I asked him what was happening with the house, with the land, with her things. It had been months. Nobody had been out there. The grass would be waist-high. The roof might be leaking. The tools could be stolen. He looked at me like I'd suggested burning down our own home. "You're not going," he said. I laughed, because it didn't make sense. "Dad, it's just, you're not going," he repeated, sharper this time. "And you're not going out there alone." I asked why. He didn't answer. So I did what I told myself was logical. I did it anyway. I called my best friend Mason. He was the kind of guy who didn't get spooked easily. He worked long shifts, slept hard, and carried himself like the world was a problem he could solve by staying calm. We planned it like a normal weekend. Cooler, food, a little extra cash, a couple of cheap flashlights, a grill grate to replace the old one we knew had rusted through years ago. We didn't tell anyone. My parents were used to me disappearing for a day or two. I lived alone in an apartment in the city. I didn't check in as often as I should have. If they noticed, it would be after we were already back. That was my logic. And that's what makes me feel sick now. We left Friday afternoon. The highway was busy, the air thick with early summer heat, the kind that makes everything look hazy in the distance. We turned off Route 77, where the GPS usually lost its confidence. The map tried to reroute us 3 times before it settled on a thin gray line and stopped talking. The road narrowed. The trees leaned closer. And then something weird happened. We didn't pass a single other car. Not one. It wasn't midnight. It wasn't a blizzard. It was late afternoon on a Friday in June. The exact time you'd expect people heading out to lake houses, weekend cabins, anywhere green. But the road was empty, like it had been closed for years. Mason noticed it too. He didn't say anything at first. He just tapped the dashboard a few times, like he expected a radio station to appear if he hit the right spot. Finally, he said, "This place always like this?" "No," I told him. "Not like this." And that was true. The town wasn't supposed to be empty. The first buildings showed up in a loose line, like someone had dropped them in the woods without measuring. A faded church sign, a fence that leaned sideways, a row of mailboxes with peeling numbers. Then the store. It was closed. Not closed for the day. Closed like it didn't want to be seen. The windows had paper taped inside from corner to corner, blocking the view. The front door had a chain across it, but no padlock. Like the chain was just there to remind the door what it was supposed to do. There were no cars parked outside. No bikes, no dogs. The town didn't look destroyed. It didn't look burned out or storm hit. It just looked unattended. As we drove deeper, I started seeing things I didn't want to notice. Gates hanging open on tall privacy fences. Front doors standing ajar on houses that still had curtains in the windows. A porch swing moving slightly, even though there was barely any wind. A kid's plastic tricycle tipped on its side in a driveway. The wheels half sunk into new grass. Mason slowed down. "Dude," he said quietly, "what is this?" "I don't know." And I meant it. My grandmother's place was still there, still upright, still wearing its old paint like a tired coat. The gate latch had rusted, but it held. The yard had exploded. Grass up to my stomach. Vines climbing the porch posts. The old canopy in the back collapsed like a dead animal. The key was where it always had been. That detail should have comforted me. Instead, it felt wrong, because it meant nobody had bothered to take it. Nobody had bothered to lock it. We forced the door open with the key and a shoulder, the lock protesting like it had forgotten how to work. Inside, the air smelled stale and warm, like a house that had been holding its breath. Dust coated the kitchen counters. The living room furniture was covered with old sheets that sagged in the middle, creating soft shapes that looked like sleeping bodies if you glanced too quickly. We opened windows. We worked. We made jokes that didn't land. By evening, we were sweaty and tired, and the place looked almost normal. Almost. I wanted Mason to understand why I used to love it there. So we walked down toward the river. The sun was still up, low and bright, turning the water into a sheet of dirty gold. And that's when the feeling hit me. The town wasn't quiet in a natural way. It was quiet like a room where someone had just been told to stop moving. We walked past house after house and didn't see a single person. No one mowing. No one on a porch. No TV sounds. No distant engine. Not even a cat. And that town always had cats. Mason lit a cigarette with shaking fingers and tried to make it look casual. "I gotta ask," he said, "is it always this heavy?" "No," I told him. "It's never been like this." We turned back. We should have left right then. Instead, we kept walking toward the house because it still felt like the only thing in town that belonged to me. When we got back, the front door was open, wide open. I know I shut it. I remember it because the frame stuck and you had to pull it hard to get it seated. And inside, everything was everywhere. The cooler lid was flipped back. Packaged food scattered across the floor. Bottles rolled under the table. A bag of charcoal torn open like someone had looked inside and gotten angry. And the raw meat we'd brought for the grill was gone. Not pushed aside. Gone. Mason stood in the doorway with his mouth slightly open, like he was waiting for the punchline. My first emotion wasn't fear. It was rage. I grabbed the old hatchet from the tool closet, my grandfather's, and walked the yard like I'd seen men do in movies, trying to look bigger than I felt. I checked the porch, the shed, the back fence. I pushed my way through tall grass to look for footprints in the dirt by the river. Nothing. No tracks. No broken branches. No disturbed weeds. Like whoever had been in our house didn't need to walk through the yard to get there. That's when the fear arrived, cold and simple. I told Mason to stay inside and lock the door from the inside. The door had an old sliding bolt, thick enough to stop a determined person if the frame held. Then, I walked down the road to the nearest neighbors, an older couple who used to sit on their porch in the evenings and wave at everyone like it was their job. Their gate was hanging open. Their porch steps were covered in weeds. Their front door was cracked. I called out just once. No answer. I didn't go inside. I couldn't make myself do it. I just peered through the opening and saw a dark hallway, furniture covered in sheets, the same as my grandmother's. Like someone had prepared every house in town the same way. I walked to another, and another, and another. Some doors were kicked in. Some windows were boarded. Some yards looked like nobody had touched them since early spring. 20 houses. Not a single sign of people. Not a single sign of leaving. It was like the town had been paused. I went back fast, my heart thudding in my throat. The front door was closed, from the inside. I knocked once. "Mason," I said, "open up." I heard the bolt slide. The door opened just enough for me to see him holding a kitchen stool like a weapon, his knuckles white, his face drained of color. He didn't speak. He just stepped back and let me in. We slid the bolt again, sat in the main room. We didn't turn on the lights. The darkness felt safer, like it hid us from something that was looking for movement. I told him what I'd seen. Empty homes, open gates, no people. He nodded slowly, like he'd already accepted it. Then he told me what happened while I was gone. "I locked the door behind you," he said. His voice was low and flat, not panicked, not whispering, just careful. I started picking up. I heard the gate open. The gate was loud. Always had been. It squealed like it wanted attention. Mason swallowed. "I thought it was you coming back." Then, right after, I heard the doorknob. He gestured toward the front door. It started, trying hard. Not a polite test, not a knock. A steady, violent attempt to open it. The handle jerking like someone had no patience. Mason said he backed away and grabbed the stool. And then, over the sound of the handle fighting the lock, he heard the gate again. The same squeal. The same hinge. Like whatever had come into the yard, left without ever stepping on the ground between the gate and the door. He stood there for a long time after that, listening, waiting for something else. Nothing came, until I returned. I started to ask him how that was possible, and that's when we heard it. A single, heavy impact, somewhere near the back of the house. Not a crash from inside, not a branch from above. A hit against a window in the far bedroom, the bedroom my grandmother had slept in. We looked at each other. Neither of us moved. And here's the thing, nothing followed it. No second hit, no scratching, no running away, just one strike, placed carefully, like a reminder. We stayed where we were, listening to each other breathe. Sometime later, the car alarm went off. Mason's truck was parked near the front of the yard, where the grass was thinner. There were no trees overhead, nothing to fall. The alarm stopped, then started again, then stopped, then started, like someone was leaning on it and backing off, leaning again, backing off. Not random, waiting, trying to pull us outside. We didn't go. We sat with our backs to the wall, hatchet in my hands, Mason gripping the stool, like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Then we heard footsteps under the window. Soft, careful steps, but they couldn't hide the sound of snapping twigs and dry debris. The footsteps circled slowly, paused, moved again. I felt heat rush into my chest, like my body didn't know whether to fight or pass out. I checked my phone. No service. Mason checked his. No service. The house suddenly felt too small to hold us and whatever was outside at the same time. Then the wind picked up. A storm rolled in fast, like it had been waiting behind the trees. Rain hammered the roof. Thunder shook the glass. The yard disappeared behind a wall of water. If something moved outside after that, we couldn't hear it over the storm. The night stretched. The kind of long night where you start forgetting what morning is supposed to look like. When the rain finally eased, we stepped onto the porch. The world outside was not brighter. It was covered in fog. Not a light mist. A heavy, thick layer that swallowed the road and the trees and everything past the edge of the yard. Fog so dense it made the morning feel unfinished. We stood there, not speaking, trying to decide if we could drive in it. That's when we heard splashing near the side of the house. Not puddle splashing like someone running. Slow splashing, like someone was walking deliberately through standing water. Then, without warning, something hit the front door. Not a fist, not a shoulder. A full body slam. The door shook in its frame. The bolt held. Another slam. Harder. The door trembled again and I saw dust fall from the top of the frame. Then silence. No grunts, no laughter, no words. Just the wet sound of something shifting weight outside. And then nothing at all. Mason's eyes were wide. He didn't blink. I realized I was holding my breath. We waited until our legs started to cramp. Then we waited longer. Hours passed in fragments. I remember sun trying to push through the fog. I remember my head aching like someone had clamped the base of my skull. By the time the fog thinned, it was late morning, maybe later. Hard to tell without checking anything. We listened for a long time. No movement, no alarm, no footsteps. Just insects starting up again like they'd been waiting their turn. Mason put his hand on the bolt. He looked at me once, like he wanted me to stop him. I didn't. He slid it open. The door creaked outward. And the yard was empty. We moved fast. We didn't bother closing anything. We didn't go back for our things. We ran through wet grass to the truck, Mason fumbling with the keys, me gripping the hatchet like it could explain itself if I stared at it hard enough. The engine turned over. We drove. We didn't look back. The 15 miles to the highway felt longer than the entire trip out. I kept expecting the engine to die, kept expecting the tires to go soft, kept expecting to see something in the rear window, something keeping pace without needing a car. But nothing followed. When we hit the highway and saw other vehicles, real traffic, real people, I felt my body loosen in a way that made me almost nauseous. Mason drove straight to the city without stopping. We didn't speak much, not because we agreed not to, because every time one of us tried, it felt like we'd be putting something into the world that might hear us. I slept for 2 days. When I finally went to my parents' place, I didn't tell them what happened. I only asked my dad, casually, like it didn't matter, whether we were going to sell the house or check on it this summer. His face changed in a way I can't describe without sounding dramatic. Not fear, recognition. Like I'd said a word that had been sitting in his mouth for months and burning him. He set his coffee down carefully, and he said, "There's nothing to go back for." I waited. He didn't look at me. "We're not selling it," he added. "We're leaving it." As a memory, that was my attempt to make it sound normal. He finally looked at me then, and for the first time since my grandmother died, I saw something in his eyes that made me understand why he'd gone quiet. Not grief, guilt. "We didn't leave it," he said. "It kept it." I tried to find information online, news, local posts, anything. Nothing. No articles, no police reports, no community pages. Like the town didn't exist on the internet anymore. Mason avoided me for a week, then started hanging out again like nothing happened. But there was a strain to it, like we were both pretending that, if we didn't name it, it couldn't follow us into normal life. I thought about the missing meat sometimes. That small detail bothered me more than the slamming door, because it suggested hunger, or planning, or payment. A month later, I got a package at my apartment. No return address. Just my name, spelled correctly, in neat block letters. Inside was something wrapped in brown paper. A house key, old, rusty. On the ring was a little plastic tag, the kind realtors use, faded red, with a number written in black marker. Not my grandmother's key, not mine, not Mason's. I stared at it until my hands went cold. Then I flipped it over. There was a second tag attached to the ring, newer, clean white plastic, and written on it, in the same neat block letters, was an address. Not in that town, not in any rural place, my apartment building's address. And beneath it, smaller, like an afterthought, your address. Yes, yours. Because that's the part you're about to tell yourself is just a story. You're going to assume I'm trying to mess with you. You're going to keep listening anyway, because curiosity always feels safer than fear. But if you've made it this far, you've already done what I did. You've followed the road past the point where other people turn back. So when you hear a gate squeal tonight, when you don't remember there being a gate, don't go look. And if something tests your doorknob like it's impatient, don't pretend you didn't notice, because it doesn't need to break in. It only needs you to understand that the door was never the point. The point is that it has a key now, and it knows exactly where to use it.